Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Louise Mormon, and I sort of have the joy of looking around this wonderful audience and knowing almost every single person here. So we have an eclectic and wonderful group of people, and I think you're going to thoroughly enjoy not only what you learned today, but getting to know each other. You're a very special group of people. In our group, we have several folks that are former Leadership Institute students, now alumni, off in the real world doing amazing things. And it means so much to me that you take the time and effort and expense to come back here to Oxford. So thank you. We also have many, many friends from Eli Lilly and Company, and we certainly appreciate them in so many ways. We have business leaders, we have executive coaches, we have people from Miami's administration, faculty and staff, and other friends that we make along the way, because Lilly is a community and we welcome all of you to be part of our community. I do want to give a special shout out to career services. We work very closely with career services all year long. They teach classes to our students. They arrange mock-up interviews. And they've just been our partners all along the way. And they've also been generous enough, and we have one of our wonderful people from career services here. They've been wonderful in providing us a grant to help support our reception that we're having this afternoon so that you can have time to really get to know one another and chat. So thank you very much. And I have to say this because how this happens, a big part of how this happens is Fabian Bohan. Please stand up. This would not be without her. And I want to thank you so much. And it is extremely hard to actually get her to sit still for a moment on this day because she's coordinating so many things. So she promised me she would be here at just this moment so that we could all publicly thank her. Wonderful as always. Now I would like to recognize cohort 11. These are our juniors. Would you guys stand up? Now, some of them are out, with the name tags and welcoming people and all. Some are working on AV, some are back here making everything work. But this is the group that really has worked on the Embrace AI project this whole academic year. And they've done many, many things. This is the culmination, but they've been studying AI and how it will be transforming the world in the future all year long. They've taught the cohort your younger classes so that they could all feel a part of this too. They created a wonderful website called embraceai.co that includes many interviews they've done, resources. It's a great place if you want to sort of catch up on a quicker way to see what's happening in the world. So please, with me, please thank cohort 11. Now, also mention that they have these buttons, as do some of the other students. So if any of our guests have any questions, any logistics, anything like that, check for the people with the buttons and they'll help you out. Now I'm going to introduce a couple other of our cohorts. And I look to some of our alums because when I do this, it is that rare moment when I don't feel as old as they feel. So here's how this works. I'm going to ask cohort 12 to stand up. These are currently sophomores. So they have been a part of helping all of this. And for those folks, when we have people from cohort 1, they're starting in their head to figure out how old they are. Just you guys, just say, right? So thank you all for being here. And I'm asking them to stand up so you can see some of these people. So at the reception, right, you can come up and talk to them and get to know them. Next, I would like, okay, you ready for this? Cohort 13 to stand up. Now, cohort 13, these are first years. They have just been recruited. I know each of you only through your interview. We have not even had a welcome party. They've never had a class, but already they're doing amazing things and helping us. So please, please take a look at some of these folks, and at the reception, be sure to have a conversation with them. Thank you. So we have an extremely important topic today, right? This is a big deal. Artificial intelligence is what the world's talking about. It's what the stock market is talking about. And I will say one thing. I've been in tech a pretty long time because chances are I might be the oldest person in this room. So when I went to Miami University majoring in systems analysis, we used punched cards, like you see in the museums. And I remember the changes over time. When I was in college, I got my first calculator that would do scientific things. It was a Texas Instrument calculator. It cost $150. And I remember when we think about people's fears about new things, that a lot of people, including professors and all kinds of people, thought if students had calculators and people had calculators, it would like destroy their brains because they wouldn't be able to do it in their head anymore. And then, of course, over time, I remember when I worked for a company and I purchased our first Apple IIc. Okay, that was the precursor to the Macintosh. So that my group was doing research at the time and doing analytics, so we could use something called VisiCalc, which for you guys, that was like before Excel. And the only reason IT would let me purchase this is because I was in corporate planning at the time. I had originally come from IT, so I was like, okay. But they certainly thought if regular people in the company use their own computers, they couldn't be trusted, right? So that's part of our history as humans, as we go through changes. And, we've had the internet, and we've had so many things happen. These things are all complex, and they don't come without risks, but we manage it. We learn how, and the world goes on and becomes a better place. So I think our topic is very wonderful. But how our topic actually became better was Fab and I went to visit Eli Lilly late last summer, I think. And we were in a meeting, and one of the executives in the meeting said, when obviously artificial intelligence is on the minds of, all executives, right? And he said, it's one thing to worry about the tech side, but that's probably easier than to get all of the humans to figure out how to use this in a way that really makes a positive difference in the world. And that was, I think, very profound, because when I look back in my history, that's sort of the thing, right? It isn't that you couldn't have a technology, it's how do you actually get it to make big differences. So that's how we came up with what we have today, Embrace AI, unleash the full potential of professionals. So as is usually the case, it isn't just one person or one thing that comes up with an idea. It's conversations with people out there in the real world. And so with that, I'd like to kick off. It's going to be a great program today. I'm very excited about it. And I'd like to turn it over now to Michael Seeger. And he is going to introduce a video of our next speaker. Many of you may know Michael. He's from cohort 6. He works at Lilly. He was a teaching assistant, and he has come back often to teach classes to our students on the topic of introversion and also on questions. So lots of you have seen and know Michael. Okay, now we're going to do a mic change.
Now to introduce Diego Rao, who is our Chief Information Digital Officer at Lilly Learning Company. And of course, I used AI to help me generate my own. That better? How about now? All right. And of course, I used AI to help generate my intro, of course. So Diego Rao is the Senior Vice President and Chief Information Digital Officer at Lilly Learning Company. He joined us at Lilly in May. All right. All right, awesome. Okay, let me try again. So Diego joined us May 2021. I was going to make a joke about that not being long enough, but I think we already made enough jokes about feeling old. So prior to Lilly, Diego was the top executive in information technology for retail and online stores at Apple, where he led the development and implementation of technology supporting Apple online stores and Apple retail stores. His experience as a partner at McKinsey & Company, leading North America IT organization and governance practice. He holds a bachelor's degree in computer science and master's degree in industrial engineering and engineering management from Stanford University. And just from a personal, putting the AI aside for a second, Diego has done a whole bunch of stuff to help us embrace AI at Lilly and has a lot of good insight that he can share about it, which is why we wanted to introduce him, open up today with his talk. So Diego unfortunately wasn't able to join us in person, but we were able to actually record a video with him, which we're going to show to you now. And the way that worked is actually the students created questions that they wanted to ask Diego, and he answered them. And actually, he answered them off the cuff. So this is more or less as if he were here answering questions. And I just want to say real quick, just thank you for him doing this, and please enjoy the video. Also, special thank you to Livy Reed and Kristen Basu, who helped us from the communication side get all of that coordinated and worked with the Lilly video team to actually put the video together and all that fun stuff and deal with all my annoying emails asking when the video was going to be ready. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. So I think that was a great introduction to our day. And our next speaker has so much experience in how to bring forth change in the world. So I wanted to introduce Jeff Wilcox. Jeff, many of you know, we would not have a Leadership Institute if it weren't for Jeff Wilcox. And he was part of what created us over a dozen years ago. And he was just a gigantic supporter. He has had many very important jobs over the years. At various times, I don't know if I can remember all of these. He was the corporate vice president of engineering and program operations for Lockheed Martin, which is huge. And also, he was part of, and this has been years ago, the digital transformation team. And I believe they also kind of thought of it as an enterprise transformation on how to bring about, this is before the talk of AI, how to bring about changes across such a large organization. He's an expert in complexities. He's taught classes at all kinds of universities, like Georgetown, et cetera. But most of all, he is really wise. I've learned so much from him through the years, and I deeply appreciate that friendship. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you. This is so cool to be standing here again. I think, I don't know, 10 times or so, I think I've stood here and had the pleasure of just engaging in all kinds of ways with the university throughout the years, including having two kids who went to this university and who are now, working. I'm not paying tuition. So that's just wonderful, something your folks all have to look forward to. So I've been retired now this is my 4th year of retirement. And so that title is probably still left over on my LinkedIn profile, but if I updated it, it would just say guy with a dog. I don't really do that anymore. I did a little bit of dabbling with consulting, but now I'm just enjoying retirement. And so nobody asked me to go anywhere anymore or say anything. So thank you for giving me a reason to go somewhere. And I always found giving talks was how I learned. And writing is how I learn. So, but I think it's my brain is skipping me. But there's a quote about writing, which is, "I write because it's how I know what I think." And speaking is kind of the same. It lets me study things like artificial intelligence and kind of figure out what I think. It occurred. We can go to my first chart if that's okay. And I have to start with an apology. I realized watching the Lilly video that I left an L out of your name, and I am really, really sorry for that. But it will be corrected through the miracle of modern editing. Maybe Alex can even correct it while I talk. It occurred to me putting notes together last night that cohort 11 was in 2nd grade when we started this institute. So for you cohort 13 folks, you were in kindergarten when we started this institute. I don't say that in the spirit of like I'm getting old joke or a time flies kind of joke. I want you to sit with it for a minute. That when you were in 2nd grade, a group of people got together here and in some sense anticipated your arrival. In some sense said, we want to build a community. We want to create a community where you can come, you 2nd graders or kindergartners, and unfold and be supported and learn, and most importantly, probably contribute as you become part of that system, as is evidenced by all the alum who have returned. So you're now part of that community. And I want, as I talk, to ask you to keep that in mind of your 8-year-old self, if you will, and the fact that this was all kind of created for you. Because the essence of leadership in my definition, and there's all kinds of definitions of leadership and different leadership models, is first there was nothing and then there was something, right? It's the creation of community. And that's just incredibly powerful as a human being, to be a part of that. And we're all part of that. I also don't want to, often when I talk about leadership, people think I'm talking about CEOs or CIOs or what have you. I'm not. Everybody in here is a leader of some sort. You're a leader in your family. You're a leader in your dorm. You'll be a leader of your senior capstone project. You'll be a leader in a community group. You're all leaders because you all have some influence, and you're all feeling that influence. And so when I talk about leadership, I don't want you to have it be this abstract thought. I just want you to kind of sit with it as making a difference, people making a difference, and that's all of you. This is a bit of a kitchen sink title, but I want to talk about three things. I wanted to lay a bit of a foundation for leadership, and that's because we're here under the auspices of the Leadership Institute. So it would be wrong not to. That's our reason for being, right? So I want to talk a little bit about leadership, just some grounding. I want to talk about AI, not because I have any particular knowledge, but because it's the theme of your conference. And so I thought I should touch on that. And I want to touch on how AI, I think, can further leadership skills and leadership fundamentals. And then last, change. As Louise said, the last 5 years of my career was leading a big transformation effort. It's called the digital transformation effort. We didn't, at the time, we weren't using like generative AI as a term. It wasn't a thing, but it was machine learning and robotics and all that good stuff. And it was really the need to take 100,000 people and cast a vision for a different tomorrow, and then sort of move that change forward. And so I have a lot of scars and a lot of thoughts on change. I don't know that I captured them here, but I'm going to leave like 10 minutes for Q&A, and I hope you'll all be thinking if there's any way I can help. When Louise sent questions along, there were 7 of them, and they all had the word change in them, except one which had the word transformation in it. So I can tell that's on your mind. I've also watched all of your videos, so thank you for putting all that together. And I know change came through in that theme as well, getting people comfortable with change, supporting people through change, and so forth. So I'm going to talk about those 3 things. If you can go to the next chart, I want to nestle them all in this notion of community. I want to nestle them all in. It's easy to talk about any of these topics as sort of discrete elements, sort of cold taxonomies of leadership or change or technology. But the only reason any of those matter is the extent to which they serve the community. So I'm going to try to nestle them all in that concept of community. But let's start, if we could, the first chart. So let's talk about leadership a little bit. Like I said, have stood here and in other buildings on campus and talked about leadership over and over again. And I had one constant, which was this definition of leadership. I liked it. You'll see it includes the word community, and it also includes the word change. But, and again, there's lots of different models for leadership based on the mission and based on the leader and that leader's particular skills and interests and what drives them. A leadership model focused on a platoon sergeant taking a hill is different than a leadership model for someone who wants to form a leadership institute. And so there's lots of different ways to think about leadership. But if we're going to have a conversation about it, it's good to pick a definition. And so this was the definition that I've always gone with, I'd like to use. Next chart. So again, lots of leadership models you'll find. If you go on TED Talks, you'll find all different analogies for leadership. I've seen the leadership as orchestra conductor, or as a jazz quartet, or as a chef, or as a chess master. Lots of different models. None of them wrong or right in particular, but useful. One I always use was the leadership model of gardening, because to me, as I approach leadership, it's about creating an environment. It's not like a chess master's job is to sort of get to the end and move the pawns in a certain direction with all the constraints that come from knowing how the different pieces can move. It's really, to me, about creating this environment where people can thrive in service to that common mission. There's a lot of definitions for community as well, like you could belong to a community of people that all loves games and get together once a week and play games. That's a community. My definition of community is focused on people with a common goal. We're together to serve a common mission. And if you think about, I don't know how many of you have done much, if any, gardening, but it's another fun thing to do in retirement after you walk the dog, is think about what a gardener does. It's about creating that space and holding a vision. So you have to start by saying, okay, here's this patch of dirt, and I want it to look like a patch of dirt that turns into something I want to be able to look at or walk through or grow vegetables or cut flowers or what have you. Doesn't matter. There's all kinds of gardens, right? But you have a vision for that garden, and your job as a leader is to hold that vision. But stuff happens. Anybody that's tried to garden knows that it never turns out that way, because sometimes there's not enough sun. Sometimes there's too much sun. Sometimes there's one plant that decides to take over the whole garden. Sometimes there's one plant that says, I'm not going to grow here, and just dies. It just happens. You don't really even know why. Sometimes deer come along and eat some of your plants. Change is a constant. And so the leader's job is to expect that change and thrive in it and actually use that change for energy. I always thought I had one sort of gift as a leader. And I think it kind of came from being a middle child or just being an introvert or whatever. But whenever there was something happened, I was always the guy that's able to say, okay, that happened. Now what are we going to do? That happened. There was a drought. There was a deer ate my plants. Now what am I going to do? And leaders are constantly faced with that. I'm sure when this Leadership Institute started and Louise had a vision, and those who were working with Louise, of what that was going to look like, I'm guessing this in some ways is it, and in some ways is not it, right? And in some ways, no, that's not what I was trying to make. But change happens, sponsors change, right? Departments change where you work within the community. Regulations change around you. All kinds of things will change. And so expecting that change and thriving in that change, but first and foremost throughout it, protecting the people. That's your fundamental job as a leader, is to support and protect your people and put them in a position where they can thrive, where they can utilize their full selves in order to serve that mission. And really, I think most of all, I like the leadership model of gardening because it requires patience. If your model is a chess master, you can always make the next move. Gardening is just patience, and so is change. It is really accepting the fact that things aren't going to go as fast as you think that they're going to go. The plant's going to grow when the plant's going to grow, and you have to be patient as you go through that. I'm going to talk more about that when I talk about change in my last couple charts. The other point I always like to make is most of you come from a technology background, and we love technology. We love AI. We love robots. We love technology. It's cool and fun to talk about. But always keep in mind, again, in service to community, it's just a tool. And whether it's AI or whether it's electricity or whether it's a garden hoe, whatever, these are just tools, and tools are meant to be used in service to the mission. The next chart is a chart that I used to end all my talks on because I used to give a lot of talks to technologists. And it's a quote from Churchill. And it was actually after the war, he was giving a talk. He'd gone to Florida to heal from a whole bunch of different things, and gave a talk at a university there. And it was about, it was a war that was won by things like radar in many ways. Technology played a big role in how World War II went. But he makes this point that, technology, if you sort of remove the gendered language and replace technology or AI with engines, it's made for us. We're not made for it. We're not meant to be servants of technology. It's really important to maintain what he calls this generous and comprehending outlook on the human story. So again, as you have this conference and as you go through your careers or go back to work, it's just a tool, an important tool. Tools are great for productivity, and tools are great for things we're about to talk about with AI. But again, just a tool. The next chart is, okay, so I want to talk about leadership, but in order to do that, I need a leadership model. Because I'm going to take each of these three things and talk about how I see AI playing the interplay between artificial intelligence and these things. And the first, I think it takes, so again, you can watch a lot of TED Talks, read a lot of books on leadership, a lot of ways to break it down. This one will always work for me, that there's kind of three things you need as a leader. You need to know how things work today. You need a vision for what you want them to look like tomorrow. And you need to be able to share that in a compelling narrative. You need to share that vision in such a way that you bring people along. A community is bound together by a common narrative. So I always called these wisdom, vision, and voice. So if you can hold those kind of three things as we talk about AI, that's the structure I chose to do it in. So the first chart next chart, is about AI. And apologize, the font got a little weird as I put these together, but you're young, you can read that small font, right? So start kind of with the basics. Wisdom starts by understanding the knowledge landscape. And this kind of goes without saying, right? And there are people who will give talks on this sort of pyramid you might have seen that starts with data, and then goes to information, and then goes to knowledge, and then caps off with wisdom. It's a little facile, but there is some truth to that, that in order to be wise, you need knowledge of some sort. And more than that, you need knowledge, not just discretely, but how that knowledge is connected. And AI is really, really cool for that. And you also need the ability to see patterns. For me, the reason I have had talks over the years about how much you can teach and think about some of these concepts when you're young and how much you just have to live and get scars. I still don't have a good answer to that, but it's an interesting question. For me, that sense of seeing patterns was just thousands and thousands of meetings, for example. And after you do that for a while, you're like, oh, I've been in this meeting before. When that happens too much, that's when you retire. So, and I kind of know where this plays out. I've seen this play out. I've seen this dynamic. And it's risky. You can't just start to say, well, we tried that before, it didn't work, so don't try it. But there are patterns, and the ability to see patterns in your landscape is a big part of being able to be a successful leader, because you have to anticipate what's coming. And so I think AI is really cool for this, because some of the most interesting uses I've read about create what they call in the AI world the system ontology. Ontology is a word which comes more from philosophy. It's a theory of being. It's a theory of who we are and why we're here. But the same theory of being you can apply to technology and to AI. And again, my knowledge is really limited. I built neural networks in 1991. I think I had maybe 15 neurons, something like that, because that's as fast as the computer could do it. But you learn a lot. And by the way, in the video you just saw about taking a course, build a neural network, even if it's got 20 things, and just see and then train it on something. It's not hard. But anyway, as you sort of go through that, what AI is doing is taking all that knowledge, it's pulled in, and it's creating a landscape of energy. That's fundamentally what this large language model is. It's a language, it's a landscape of energy. It's multidimensional, but you can picture a mesh of clumps. The Battle of Hastings is a clump in this energy field, and medieval armors somewhere over here. But because it knows it's just collected so much data, it knows how those things are related. So you can really use that to see these patterns. And so I think, the takeaway from this sort of whole chart is that I think AI can accelerate the accumulation of wisdom. I really do. I still think there's an element of scars and an element of time, but a leg up is really, really useful. The second thing is kind of interesting. My son, who graduated from here last year, works in AI, works for a Bay Area startup, although he does it from my attic, but that's a whole other story, which is great. We still get to have him home, and he works remote. And so he's basically works for a startup, and so you always have lots of jobs when you work for a startup. He's kind of a prompt engineer. I'm guessing most of you have seen the term prompt engineer or are sort of familiar with it, but it's how do you ask questions of these large language models? And what I've learned in just playing around with ChatGPT is how you ask the question is really, really important, because you'll get, the wrong answer or an answer that doesn't make sense. And the act of doing that really helps you to ask better questions. And questions are huge. Voltaire said, judge a man by his questions, not by his answers. I always loved that quote. When our kids were little, we had a rule. You couldn't get up from the dining room table until you'd asked 3 questions, because questions are just huge. It's how you learn. It's how you interrogate the world, right? You can learn passively by watching, but you got to sort of poke and see what happens. I'm a radar person by background. You got to send out a ping, and you got to see what comes back. So I think that's an incredibly useful skill, asking better and better questions. I was just a couple nights ago, I wanted to know, years run together, so I asked ChatGPT, I wanted to know when this institute started. I sort of knew roughly, but I didn't really know the year. So I said, there's a leadership institute. It's at Miami of Ohio. It used to be funded by Lockheed Martin. It's sponsored by Eli Lilly. What year did it start? And the answer it came back with was 1998. I don't know where you were in 1998, but I was nowhere near this in 1998. So then I replied, that can't be right. I know, because I got to Lockheed in 2007. I said, I know it's got to be after 2007. And then it thought a little harder, and it got the right answer, I think. It came back with 2014, which is close enough for our purposes. So, asking questions is a huge skill, and I'd encourage you all to develop it. And I think you can use tools like ChatGPT to develop your ability to ask questions, ask better and better questions. There's nothing that will get you, will shift your paradigm faster or your team's paradigm faster than changing the question, which is fascinating to me. I've been in many meetings where all of a sudden I would realize, or someone else would realize, we're asking the wrong question. And once you switch to the right question, the path forward becomes much, much more clear. So there's that. But having said all of that, it's interesting. When I started out, Louise asked me months ago to speak here. So I started thinking about AI and leadership. And I'm sort of a cynic. I'm an engineer, and so engineers are all kind of cynics at heart, in a sense. It's sort of it's a profession where you're brought up with a mode towards what doesn't work. You don't want the bridge to fail. You don't want the airplane to fall out of the sky. And so you come at problems with this bias of what's going to be wrong with this. So anyway, I started very cynical, but the more I learned, the more I thought there really is a lot to be said for AI and leadership. But that said, it can speed up the accumulation of wisdom, but it can also really trap you. If you said, okay, 1998, and moved forward from that without applying some judgment, and I haven't seen judgment yet out of an AI system, you'll get stuck, and you won't be moving, your team forward. I saw a quote from Sam Altman, who runs OpenAI and ChatGPT, and he said in 5 years, prompt engineering will not be a field. And but he said that because they're building towards a general intelligence instead of artificial intelligence and generative AI. And so you don't have to ask better questions, he's saying, because it's going to know what you really mean. I don't think that's possible or true, honestly. In part because if you think about it right now, you interact with generalized intelligence every day because they're sitting right next to you right now, right? People have general intelligence. And if you ask the wrong questions, you've been at parties before and just ask one question that gets you nowhere, another question that really connects you to people. So I've belabored this enough. Questions, really, really important. Last thing there's a quote from an economist who founded a branch of semantics, and I've forgotten the name, but it's the map is not the terrain. I used to teach this when I taught systems thinking. What does that mean? This terrain, this energy field that your AI system has built up by absorbing all of this information is a map. And the map does not describe the true terrain, in part because a lot of it's language, right? And language is notoriously imprecise, and there's a whole field of study related to that. The other thing is it's not the terrain because it only includes those voices that are in the database, for starters, right? And so if you haven't written a book, your book wasn't absorbed, and so forth. If you're from a community which is not, for whatever reason, is a disadvantaged community and hasn't contributed information to what's been pulled into the artificial intelligence system, you're not going to be represented. So it's not the true terrain. It's still kind of a very sort of binary yes, no. And I like that quote there from Robert Capon, which is paradox is the only basket large enough to hold truth. When you get retired and you get to have fun with learning things like Zen Buddhism, you start to sort of mess up your head thinking about, the Western way of thinking is always there's yes and there's no, and there's no really in between, but that's not true. It's a spectrum. And so AI is not really great right now at that spectrum. And the point I want to leave here with is a plug for the arts. If you can go to the next chart, that, you know, at the end of the day, the more you can immerse yourself in the arts, the richer your dialogue will be with your community, and the better you'll understand the real terrain that this map is laid on top of. A map is useful, don't get me wrong. It's not ground truth. It's not reality. This is from when Kennedy eulogized Robert Frost. Art is the touchstone of our judgment, and James Baldwin, that poets are the only people who really know the truth about us. And the more time I spend in the arts, having spent a career, my last class in the arts was in high school. I just went straight into engineering school. I want to put a plug in for it, and I want you all to think about the richness that comes from it. Next chart. So this is vision in AI, and I had some more trouble with that because I can see the uses of AI for wisdom, but not at first for vision. Vision, again, is the casting of the tomorrow you want to create. You know, so in the case of the Leadership Institute, this image Louise and her team had of what they wanted to make when you were all in kindergarten and first grade and second grade. And vision at heart comes from imagination. Something doesn't exist. You just have to imagine it into existence, which is really cool. When that picture at the bottom is to remind me to tell a story, because I don't keep notes with me and I forget what I want to talk about. But when I got my first management job / leadership job, I think I was like 30-ish, and I was taking over a group of maybe 30 or 40 people. I had a mentor who on that first day gave me a magic wand. And his message to me was, it wasn't really magic, it was a stick with a star on top. His message to me was, it's really important to be able to say, what if this, you know, it's easy to get stuck by constraints, but what if this were true? What if I could make that obstacle go away? It's a really important mindset for you. I think there's a lot that AI can really help you with in this sense, in that the speed with which you can imagine something and then visualize it, it just blows me away now. When we were at Lockheed and I was doing digital transformation, we spent a lot of money creating a video. It's still out on the internet somewhere. I think it was called The Future of Work or something like that. And really computer-generated graphics. We took everything we wanted to do with smart factories and all those related topics that were part of digital transformation and made this really cool futuristic video. Hired a voice actor to do the voice acting over it. Cool, took a long time, cost a lot of money. That's like 5 minutes worth of work right now from what I've seen using AI tools. I watched a podcast a couple days ago about someone that wanted to make a movie but couldn't get the attention of Hollywood for their idea. And so what they did was they made the movie with AI. Really cool what you can do. This person said, I want a movie where Nicolas Cage is president and he's also like undead or something like that. I don't know. It was some set of things he wanted to make. And the movie appears, right? Even during this podcast, they make a movie. So I call that here the democratization of an unfolded imagination. Every human being is born with imagination, but it's a privilege to have the space and the tools to be able to pull it out and to let it flourish. So I think that's pretty cool. The other cool use I've seen for AI when it comes to vision is this ability to try on different personas. One of the friends I have who work in the field will often start their query of ChatGPT by telling it, okay, you're Steve Jobs, or you're Bill Gates, or you're whoever. How would you respond to this following business situation? And you get different answers back based on everything it knew about those individuals. Well, we all have a lens that we all acquired over time. It's sort of a basic precept of Jungian philosophy that, you know, you're born, you got genes, you got parents, you got an environment, you're going to form a lens that lets you survive in the world. You go to work, you create a persona, your ego builds up, and you create a family, and you do all these things. But it's all based on a lens which you had no choice in the creation of, because it's your genes and your parents and your environment. And so the challenge, and again, as you can see, I'm using retirement to think about the second half of life, or the fourth quarter of life, depending on years, is, okay, that's not really me, right? So how do you find the authentic self? And how do you see what's really trying to come through? I think AI can give you the power to see things from different directions, just with those simple queries, just saying, okay, this is me, I'm gonna come at this with my own biases. However, there's lots of people, who you can have AI pretend it is and see through different lenses, which I think is really cool. I like this notion of creativity. I forget where I got the quote from, but creativity is the forming of unexpected associations. And it's really cool when you mess around with AI, what pops out of those unexpected associations. A couple of caveats that, everything that comes out of generative AI is based on things that have happened in the past. By definition, it's trained on everything that's out there up to today. It's not about really anticipating the future. I'm sure someone who knows what they're talking about could say there are ways in which it is. I don't quite see how that is, just knowing what it's trained about. Vision's tough because you have to imagine a different tomorrow that doesn't exist today. And so that's a caveat as you think about the tomorrow you want to create, is to think about the limits of AI and helping you to be able to do that. The last chart here in this section was voice in AI. As was talked about in the video that we just saw, it's incredibly powerful to be able to take an AI tool and have it craft a narrative for you. It's just amazing. Write me a page on whatever, and it shows up in a matter of seconds. I think that's cool. So we talked about wisdom. We talked about having a vision for the future. Now you got to tell a story that's going to bridge those two things. You got to create your narrative, right? And tell that story. So I think you can use AI in different ways to take rough ideas and to create a narrative. I did something recently. I dabble around with writing because I like to write. And so I have a bunch of notes. Some are diary entries, some are just crazy, just ideas, there's stuff. And so I went through and I cut and pasted all of them into ChatGPT. And I said, can you merge all this and tell me what it is that I'm writing about? And it had a really compelling paragraph on what I was talking about. But I had no idea that's what I was talking about. I really didn't. But it resonated. It was, I don't know, it was something about loss and control, and it had a bunch of stuff like that. So that's really powerful. So as you find your voice, and you got these ideas, like, I don't know, just again, I keep going back to Louise and the foundation of this community. Maybe you got 10 bullets of things you would like to see different tomorrow. You can put those into a tool like ChatGPT and say, in a paragraph, what does this world look like? It's a start. So it can really help you with your voice. The other very cool thing is this notion of naming ideas. A lot of times you'll have this ephemeral sense of what it is you're trying to say or trying to do, but you can't name it because it just doesn't quite come to you. But again, and I've done this before as well, you can take these sort of loose ideas and name them, and it's helpful. I did another thing, which was I also write down my dreams as often as I can and remember them. I cut and pasted all those into ChatGPT, and I said, what common themes do you see in my dreams? And I won't share them with you because they're terrifying. But it's interesting, it says, okay, these are the things that apparently your subconscious is worrying about. Okay, that's helpful to know, I guess, and a little terrifying. But anyway, so there are ways I think that you can use ChatGPT, but I think of all three, wisdom, vision, and voice, I would have the strongest caution for voice, because there's nothing more fundamental than to connect with another person. It's walking on holy ground, and your ability to make that connection and tell a story, if it's not you, if it's not real, if it's artificial, which is the A in AI, I think it's going to fall short. And so never lose yourself as you use these tools. So then the final section, and I did this in two parts. I have two charts left. There's when you think about change, there's the change you want to create. That's what I've been talking about with vision. And so when you ask me questions like, how do you get people comfortable with change, or how do you do change management? That's what we're talking about. it's changing towards that division. There's another sort of change, which back in my gardener analogy is stuff happens. You know, it doesn't rain, what happened? And you have to deal with that change as well. So you have to be able to hold those two things in your mind at the same time. You got to hold your vision and talk about change, and you got to deal with the changes that come along the way, and they will. But just a few notes, and I heard some of these in the videos that you did with industry leaders, which were really helpful. But number one, when talking about digital transformation, and I heard this consistently from people that have been doing it in other industries, is you need to constantly be telling that story and articulating your vision of change. And maybe most importantly, why? Because most of the people you're trying to convince to change are very comfortable with what they're doing. You see that quote from Upton Sinclair, and they don't feel the need to change for the most part. And sometimes, the stock price is up, revenue is higher than ever. Why are you talking about change? I don't understand. So you have to have a why, and keeping that why front and center is really important. It goes without saying, but leadership, change is doomed to fail. Transformation is doomed to fail if leaders don't embrace it, and if leaders don't not just talk about it, but practice it. And I saw both sides of that. I've seen leaders that leave their comfort zones, and silly example, we had, you see this notion of starting small changes. We had a vision of this digital future, but we were all still working in email, just for example. So small changes are the key to transformation. So we moved people into Slack as best we could. I'm guessing most of you are in Slack now. Most companies are. But at the time, it was all email. Well, leaders were not comfortable, executives, because these are baby boomers at the time type generation. And so some of them just wouldn't do it. They would keep doing emails. And so that group never really embraced Slack. Others would. And if the leader's on Slack and talking in that channel, and everybody knows that channel is being followed by the leader, that change will start to happen. So if you find yourself with a change initiative and a leader that doesn't believe in it or isn't about to do it, you need to find another leader or another place to go to make your change. Small changes, a lot of stuff, it's all good. The other point I like to make, back to the garden again, is it's good to have more than good, it's critical to have a vision, but you also have to respect the fact that it's not going to come out like that, whatever your vision is. It's going to be different because the art of the possible, because of change. Change is going to happen, and the end state will be different. It will be beautiful, and it will be in harmony with the art of the possible. But I saw a lot of people that would cling to a vision and say, "No, we're going to do this," and I don't care what problems there are along the way or what other ideas there are. You got to hold your vision gently, and you have to hold the vision lightly, and just respect that art of the possible. And then the last chart here is some thoughts on change along the way. The changes that happen along the way are actually, they'll seem like crises, but the crises are just opportunities, really. And things will come out the other side better. But the morning you wake up and you get emails, tied to that particular, our funding was canceled. Our CEO announced their retirement, and the new CEO, who was the whatever and doesn't like me or doesn't like my program, is now in charge. These kind of things happen. You have to use that energy and sort of move forward. Plans are meant to be held lightly in general. So personal story, but I retired in January 1 of 2020, and I had a great plan for retirement. I had bought season tickets to the Washington Nationals. I'm a big baseball fan, with some friends, not 80 games, but a lot of games, 20 games. I had made plans to travel. I had made plans to see friends. I had this vision for my retirement. And on January 6th or 7th, I think, a whole bunch of things happened. I started with a kidney stone. You're all too young to have had kidney stones, I hope, but it's just the most painful thing, for a guy that you're ever going to go through. So that was that. And then I get back from the emergency room, and then I get a text from my mom's nursing home that she was just admitted to the nursing home. So I get back in the car and I go and I spend the next 3 weeks with my mom in the hospital, and stuff is happening. And then I finally say, okay, it's baseball season. I go down to spring training in Florida in February. And while I'm on the airplane on the way back, they canceled the rest of the season because COVID had just started. And so no more baseball. So what's my point in all that? I had a plan for retirement. Didn't work out that way. But, in hindsight, in the fullness of time, well, because I retired, I was able to be there, first of all, for my mother. In a way I wasn't for my father, because I was in the throes of work when he was in his final year. And through technology, I ended up connecting with people I wouldn't have connected with otherwise. It was amazing how, second cousins will kind of come out of the woodwork and let's have a Zoom call and so forth. So anyway, plans are great. Hold them lightly and just respect that you don't really know how things are going to come out. And back to the gardening again on a final note. I like this quote from Bruce Lee, that enterprises are not happy with patience because they're all about moving forward. Most of the people in your life are not really happy with patience because they want to see things moving forward. It could be parents, could be bosses, could be whatever. Sometimes patience is what's called for. And I like this notion that patience is not a passive thing done right. It's actually concentrated strength. You're watching, you're waiting, you're building up the skills for what you're going to need to do next. But whenever I'm asked about making change and changes, I preach patience, even though everything around you will try to push you in a different direction. So I do have a final, well, let's do the next chart. And then I want to open up to questions and just see what's on your mind. I just want to sort of come back to this notion that, leadership is a gift, and you're all leaders. And that gift is you have influence. You may not think you do. Could be a sibling, could be someone you're making coffee for if you work at Starbucks, could be whatever. It's a gift to be able to learn about the world and to have a vision for a different way the world can be, and to share that vision and to lift people up, to create a situation, even if it's a conversation with a dorm mate or what have you, where somebody can unfold into their true selves. It's a really cool thing. And I'm just thrilled that this community exists to support that and to nurture that. You're all part of something very special. And I'm honored that I was asked to still be a part of that something special. And I do have, I think, a final chart, but I didn't want to go there yet. I wanted to take questions if I could. How much time do I have, Louise? I always go long.
We have a question or two.
A question or two. That means I went long. Any questions? I've loved my questions I've gotten here over the years. They help me think. And don't forget what Voltaire said about it.
So you mentioned the importance of patience. How do you recognize when patience?
I'm not going to have a good answer for you because you just feel it. There is a time to step back and a time to watch and a time to gather your strength. You sort of know when it's going to matter to engage and when it's not going to matter to engage. Silly example, I grew up outside of Buffalo and would often get stuck in the snow. And if your car is stuck in the snow, the way you get it out is you kind of rock it. And so you get two friends behind the car and you push and it rocks and then it goes back. And you push again. And if you keep doing that, eventually you get enough forward momentum, you can get over the hump and you can move your car. What's my point? Don't push when the car is coming back at you, right? You wait until it's starting to go back the other way and then you push. So there's something in there about, you know in a moment, I think, if you pushing is going to matter or not, or is going to help or not. And you know when it's time to act. It's just something you'll feel. I wish I had something more specific than that. But I think it's a central fact of life, and it's not just work. It's parenting. It's dealing with elder care with your parents. It's knowing when to just be there and knowing when to do something is really hard. But it's a great question. And all I can tell you is if you stay present and mindful and aware and just pay attention, you'll know when it's time to switch. So I can do one more. Yeah.
How do you
Can you say that a little different way? How do you deal with changes which are? Yeah. You start by not panicking because your first reaction will be to panic. And you take a breath and you gather your people around and you talk about it. First of all, you need to communicate very clearly this change is happening. In the absence of information, people always assume the worst. So if you know there's been a big budget cut and there's going to have to be layoffs, well, everyone's going to assume that it's much worse than it actually is unless you talk about it. And so you need to, of course, there's a time for that. You have to know when you know something and when you're just guessing. I'm trying to answer that question by thinking of a sort of specific change. Yeah, you get over the initial shock. You don't let anybody see the initial shock. You kind of absorb it. You get your people around and you talk about it. And then you think about what it means to your vision and how you need to adapt your vision accordingly. And I had lots of those situations at work where you come in one day and you have a new boss who's got their own agenda. Okay, now what do I do? Patience, and you pay attention and you just sort of try to figure out what's now the art of the possible without losing what you want to do. And first and foremost, you protect your people through that, and sometimes you have to lose people, but protecting them in that case means helping them to find other work in the company or to find, something that makes them happy outside of the company. But what you find in the moment is it's really hard, and what you find in the fullness of time is it's really good. I'm hard-pressed to think of a crisis that, in hindsight, I probably could if I stood here for a while, but in hindsight wasn't a net positive that put energy into the system that was a good thing. So Louis says I'm out of time. I did have one last chart. I don't remember what it is, but I like this. So I used to have been retired now 4 years, and we used to have that long definition for leadership. I have a shorter one now, and I wish I remembered where I first heard it, but I don't. It was on a podcast. But at the end of the day, it's really as simple as taking responsibility for your influence. And again, you all have influence. Stepping up to that and taking responsibility for it and moving forward with it is the essence of leadership. It's also the essence of life. You all have influence in life, and the act of taking responsibility for that influence is how you enter the world. That's how you become more human. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Al.
I
Oops. Forgot I hit
think
you.
you're productive enough. There's a lot for you to think of and a lot. Good stuff. So what I'm going to ask you is you're going to have is a concept you find something. So why don't you stand up and do the sacrifices, we'll give our proper meeting for a fireside chat.
Is this a good position for it? Yeah. And then you're just going to give yours straight to one. You're just going to give that one that's clipped on you straight to one of the speakers. No need to turn it off or anything. Will I have to hold that?
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jessie Gentles. I am a third-year software engineering major and also a member of cohort 11 of the Lilly Leadership Institute. Today, I will be welcoming Charlie Haddad, who is the Associate Vice President of Information Technology and the Chief Enterprise Business Architect at Eli Lilly and Company. Charlie is a Miami University alum and a longtime friend of the Lilly Leadership Institute. He has served at many conferences and events for the Lilly Leadership Institute, and he has kindly agreed to speak with us today about artificial intelligence and its impacts. For the last 30 years, Charlie has worked on delivering digital solutions in pharmaceutical development. And most recently, he was responsible for improving patient experiences using digital health software and devices. Currently, he leads a team of innovators and architects who create and shape solutions for strategic business priorities. On behalf of Cohort 11, I am honored to welcome Charlie Haddad today. Thank you.
And hello again, good afternoon. My name is Ryan Holthouse. I am also a third-year junior student here at Miami University, currently studying computer science. I'm of course, I am also, of course, a member of cohort 11 of the Lilly Leadership Institute, and it's my distinct pleasure today to introduce Brian Lewis, who currently serves as lead AI architect at Eli Lilly and Company. Brian is a graduate of Indiana University with a bachelor's of science in chemistry and a minor in computer science. And having joined Lilly in 2000 originally as a chemist, he later transitioned into a technology role and since has been a champion of enterprise architecture and technological mentorship and innovation. Truly, with such an incredible, and I mean incredible network of incredibly talented individuals from across the industry behind him, he is just an inspired leader and truly an invaluable asset to all who have the pleasure of knowing him and working with him. Please join me and the rest of cohort 11 in welcoming Brian Lewis.
On his next performance review. But seriously, I would say that was a great intro for you.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brian.
So, as was shared, my name is Charlie Haddad, and it's just such a pleasure to be here with everyone today. It's great to be a part of this conference and to be in a position where we can talk about AI at Lilly. But it's also, I think, even better to be just to see the cohorts all here together. As a sponsor of this effort at Lilly, it's just proud to see all of you here, all the students, past, present, and then we'll obviously have future coming. Just before we get into it, I would like to also just echo my thanks to cohort 11 for all the work you guys for all the great work you guys have done to organize the conference, and for Louise and Fab, who's not here, and all the staff and other support individuals that have made this possible. It's clear that your engagement and attention to this has made this a great conference, and hopefully for all of you, it's been a great learning journey. So not just about putting this effort on, but also what you're able to get out of the conference as a result. Maybe before we get into the rest of the discussion on AI, just a little bit of context on Eli Lilly and Company, because I think it's relevant to recognize our context and our history that leads us into the discussion about AI today. So Lilly has been a company for more than 145 years, and it was founded by a chemist, just like Brian. Didn't go to IU though, probably went to Miami, of course, and Colonel Lilly. And he founded the company with this recognition that we needed to make medicines more safe for the people that took it. We needed to be able to make them and innovate on them using proven methods. and that we needed to have integrity in the way that we got them out into the market. And that is through selling to HCPs or doctors, as opposed to selling direct to people who didn't always know what was going on with them and whether they should buy medicine. And I think that history that he founded the company on has stuck with us through the course of our nearly 150 years, where we've seen many innovations come along, whether that's the first mass-produced insulin or the first mass-produced polio vaccine, or the first new class of antidepressants, or the first targeted therapies for cancer. These types of innovations, or innovations in the biological sciences, or now in gene therapy, are all new innovations that have come along the way and have caused us to have to change as a company, and have also been choices that we've made to make that change to be a leader in innovation. And I think that's really where AI comes in today, and what you saw from Diogo's comments at the beginning of this. Now, why don't we just go ahead and cue up the first video? I think we've got a good video here from Sherry Boston. It talks about innovation at Lilly. And I'll come back and put some comments on that before we get back into it.
Lilly being an innovation company, obviously the number one thing we want employees to focus on is the breakthrough medicines that truly meet an unmet need for a patient. At the same time, I think the most exciting thing about Lilly and working at Lilly is that innovation is valued in every aspect of our company, from manufacturing to marketing to what we do with employees and getting them engaged in the community. Many things set Lilly apart from other companies, but some of the things that I think really attract employees, and I think people from the outside looking in, is our culture, it's our diversity, we respect progression. Even our campus speaks to the fact that we want to tell people who we are, what we're all about. And I think that really is a sign that we are saying we are an innovative company and we're here to stay. Colonel Lilly, over 100 years ago, had said, "Take what you find here and make it better." One of the most exciting things about Lilly is that we still say that around this company. Our CEO says it, the employees say it, and to this day, that excites all of us. We take what we find here and we find ways to make it better.
I mentioned earlier the medicines and the innovations around the medicines that we've had over the course of our history. But what you heard out of that video from Sherry was it goes well beyond the medicine. It cuts across everything that we do. And this comment about take what you find here and make it better, it is truly something that I would say, first of all, we do say at Lilly regularly. For all the Lilly folks, you've heard it probably countless times, said it yourself. But I would just say in general, I think it's a great perspective to have in life and to always be looking at ways to make things better. And I actually think the word make in there is the operative word. And that's the role that each of us play. So today, let's actually shift us into how we're using AI to make things better at Lilly. And it's my pleasure, is with the great intro that we had from Brian earlier, to have Brian here to answer all the hard questions that I'm going to ask him and that you guys are going to ask him. And I think the intro did a nice job of giving the background that Brian has. I would just add a little bit more than this. I think Brian started as in the analytical chemistry team in a product development at Lilly. As you remember, he was a chemist and computer science. He then shifted into IT. And I think it's the combination of these two things that led him down this path where in the last 10 years, he's been working on AI. As you heard from Jeff earlier, AI is not a 2023 Gen AI chat GPT phenomenon, although it certainly has changed a lot with ChatGPT. AI has been around a long time. And Brian has been leading those types of efforts through natural language generation, as well as semantic search and other things for many years. That led him last year, as we started up with our focus on an enterprise Gen AI capability. He was our tech leader. He was the person who came in and was on the frontier of the definition of and implementation of a whole bunch of new capabilities at Lilly across the organization that led to a much better understanding from the leadership team around what AI could do, as well as it gave us funding to move forward this year on some major investments in AI across the company. So you're actually in the presence of someone who's had a lot of very great experience and very relevant experience to take us through this discussion. So we'll want to get started. Is that good?
Perfect.
Okay, yeah. So first question for you, Brian, is both of us have this word architect in our title. And by the way, I'll say not only did I graduate from Miami a long time ago, my sister did as well. And when she heard that I had this new job, she's like, "You are not an architect. I graduated from the School of Architecture at Miami University, and that's a real architect." So my question for you, Brian, is what is an architect?
Yeah, that's a good one. And first off, just honored to be here. Really first time in getting exposed to what you're doing here. I'm pretty excited by the program and glad to be here. So thanks for having me. But the question, yeah, so this is interesting, right? And have been in a number of technical architecture roles at Lilly, as Charlie mentioned, over the years. And really it comes down to three main tenets that are kind of connected by a single thread. And those things are strategy, technical architecture and design, and innovation. And those are all really connected by this concept I've heard today around community. And the thing being that you're essentially helping guide the different groups that make up teams that deliver digital solutions through sometimes known, sometimes unknown technical spaces like we're dealing with now with the Gen AI boom. But being able to bring people together, organize the space, put them on a path to success. And not everything that we do, that we try, always ends in a huge success. You have to be okay with failure, but understand how that failure then is a way to learn to get to where you need to be. And I think that's where my scientific background kind of comes in handy, right? Is being able to think about all of this as a design of experiments. And every time, you may have, your flask explode, or you may not get what you thought you were going to synthesize, but you learn along the way, you document, you share, and you contribute to the community. I think that's an important thing. So it's kind of the three main things of an architect within this last, say, 18 months has been different than anything I've ever experienced before with the Gen AI boom, just given the hype and sometimes hysteria, the immaturity of the technology landscape, followed then by a huge amount of investment and commercialization of technology in this space. It's just been exciting, but also a little bit overwhelming to try to have to navigate that quickly. And then we'll talk a little bit more, but you heard in the intro video, Diogo mentioned, getting everyone at Lilly to have hands-on experience with AI. And my team was responsible for getting in there and doing a lot of that early experimentation, creating those things then that we would give to our employees to give us feedback on, so that folks had a ability to help shape the future of AI. So we'll talk some more about that, but that's what I do.
An architect.
Yeah, an architect does. Yeah.
Got back. So great. So one of the things that I think the common response I get from folks when I say I work at Lilly and we're doing some AI things, oh, well, you're using it to help discover new medicine. Of course we are. But as you heard from Sherry, that idea of innovating how we do work is across our company. It's pervasive across all organizations. So maybe I thought, Brian, if you could just help give us a sense with the different areas of the company, what are the kind of things that we think about in each of the areas about how we might apply AI to help that area achieve better outcomes for each of their goals?
Yeah, great question. I think that, putting it in the business context of Lilly is very important. And if we think about our value delivery flywheel, which kind of starts with research, you mentioned, Charlie, obviously there's stuff that we have done in the space using the creative features of machine learning and now generative AI to help in identifying new medicines. There's still a lot of opportunity there and a lot new opportunity that the evolution of the technology affords us, getting beyond just identifying the therapies, but also the targets, et cetera. So that's still a bit of green field there and opportunity, as you might have imagined, for pharma. But then as you get into development, you can think about things like, assistive tech in the labs, but then also in the clinical space, being able to leverage more clinical information to help then predict, future trial designs, new arms, new geographies, et cetera. There's still more and more opportunity there, and it's the data and the machine learning and the Gen AI that really unlocks that. And then as you kind of get then into manufacturing, I think, with having such a healthy pipeline at Lilly creates then the opportunity of having to move a bunch of volume through our manufacturing sites. And with that, then we have to be more efficient in that, more effective, leveraging, I heard smart plants and those types of things, and connecting the lines and the operators more into AI capabilities. Some of the stuff we might talk about later that we've done around vision in that space and being able to automate and ensure high level of quality as like drug delivery devices move through the line and such, very important. Then you get into sales and marketing and some things that we've been looking at there around helping. I heard some comments about being able to first draft content. You think about that in the context of promotional materials, labels, et cetera, and then also providing that information to the healthcare professionals and the sales associates when they're in the field to support their day-to-day activities. Those are just a few. And then if you think about sort of internally with our global services, things that we do every day, like finance, for example, legal, helping them to be more efficient and to help the knowledge workers in those spaces be able to focus on their area of expertise and move the company forward. And then even within IT, I think that's an exciting area, right? As you think about empowering the software engineer, the architect, the developer with code generation tools, helping navigate some of our processes more effectively. The idea of co-pilots for code generation in addition to just mining through email, et cetera. A lot of great opportunities. Some of those things I mentioned, we're making good headway in. I'm pretty excited about the next 18, 24 months and some of the things we'll be able to do.
Great. So hopefully that gives you guys a sense that AI is not constrained anywhere. It's everywhere. And I think if there's one message that we all should take away and be thinking about is that AI is not its own thing anymore. AI is just a feature in all of the tech that we use. And we've been seeing that anyway with the history of the things that we have been using. My phone wakes up and it tells me it's time for me to drive to my daughter's house every Saturday morning because that's where I go. So that's great. So maybe this, if you shift a little bit, so that was, I think, on the positive side of where AI can add value. We hear a lot about risk and the risk that AI can pose. And whether we heard even from some of Jeff's comments earlier or Diogo's, the risk around hallucination, bias, misuse of data, safety risks. So even does it recommend something? Your example, Jeff, about telling you that the Leadership Institute was founded in '98, while not correct, probably didn't have a whole lot of risk to someone. But what if in the morning, on Saturday morning, it tells me to take the wrong turn, and it turns me into a creek? That's a higher risk. So how do you think about the risk associated with AI? So the question, I guess, the first sort of the challenge, if you will, on this is, how are we using tech or how are we managing tech in order to be able to address these risks in the way that we think about our solutions?
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. Yeah, and good question, because I think we kind of hear a lot about this risk element. And obviously, internally, we've got a governance structure that covers the major elements of risk. Charlie leads the tech risk, where we're looking at things like information security, et cetera. And then we've got legal and procurement involved in other subcomponents of that as well. But really, the key is, as Charlie mentioned earlier, being a science company and now a science and technology company, taking that vision of our founder and applying that to how we go after the technology, in a responsible way. And really, one of the ways that we've done that is by using exploration and tech to then help provide the responsible guardrails for these new capabilities. And we're underpinned by a lot of experts that we've, kind of had the forethought to start to bring into Lilly for some time: machine learning engineers, data engineers, full stack engineers, data scientists, that give us then, as this generative AI boom has come along, given us the ability to quickly look at technical capabilities that can provide those responsible AI guardrails for us. And so things like input-output scanning, prompt redaction. If you're familiar with, sort of the retrieval augmented generation approach, being able to redact documents as they're being retrieved as a person is asking a question of that. This is some of the stuff that we're experimenting with and understanding to then define the tech options that we'll have so that we can have, as we lay out this map for AI, this technical architecture, we can make choices across that and know, oh, okay, if we're going to be, essentially, let's say, touching a patient, we've got to have these technical capabilities in place to ensure that what they're getting is of the quality that they would expect from Lilly. And one of the mechanisms we use to do that is this composable architecture, in addition to the combination of probabilistic and deterministic layers. So the, Gen AI, the large language models provide that probabilistic, which is prone to hallucinations. We've heard that, we believe that, we've experienced that. But then if you add a layer of deterministic logic on top of that, that can ensure ground truth as the information is returned for those highly regulated use cases, you can ensure a high level of consistency and quality in your output. We've had experience with that. And that's sort of the path forward for us in the tech space.
That's great, Brian. Thank you. Maybe one other challenge that I think would be good to talk about is the speed at which AI is moving and how we think about the way to manage ideas that come up in the company, some of which are far-fetched and some of which need to move fast, some of which may be based upon immature technologies and some of which are ones that could be ready to go. So how do you think about the way to structure in a large company like Lilly or other places the governance model? I don't know that I like the word governance, but the engagement model maybe with the organization that can support a speedy path to finding the way to value while also maintaining the controls associated with some of the risks that we just talked about.
I think that's exactly the role that architecture can play and has played, and it's bringing also then the experts together, as I mentioned, and then going through this phased approach, which we've seen validated in the market around, this scaled environment that's necessary to drive AI solutions. And it started with creating a center of excellence that was doing experiments. That's what I mentioned we were doing primarily in 2023, but then creating a factory that can start to, following our reference architecture, start to build solutions that scale for some of those big enterprise problems that I mentioned. But over time, it's really, AI at this point, it's really about the technology, sure, but it's about our people and ensuring that we have the right skilled folks to help develop these solutions, and we have folks that have an appreciation for the technology in the company that can then leverage them to their fullest extent. So that's that third phase, which is democratization. Because I think it's been mentioned multiple times, AI is inevitable. It will be in everything. It may already be to some extent. And so there's more than just the tech. It's the people, the tech, the architecture is kind of the thing, that circuitry that keeps all of that together and ensures that as we're moving through, the people, process, and technology are coming along with us. Still a lot to do there. I mean, obviously, we spent a number of years trying to get, our partners like in legal, procurement, et cetera, say, hey, AI, we're doing this, it's coming, we need some help, et cetera. Crickets. Now, obviously, the tone has changed, and those same groups are some of our most motivated to get into applying the tech for their particular needs, both in a near-term efficiency, long-term transformation opportunity.
Yeah, maybe one thing I'll just add to that too is you heard from Diogo, and I think you were talking a little bit about this as well. Those of us that have been around have seen a lot of changes. The internet and mobile devices probably were the two biggest ones in my career. What I think is unique about AI relative to those changes is the degree to which the senior executives care about how we're finding this balance between value and risk. And I think in the past, if you look at those other technology changes, the risk side of the equation was much less than what you would see with AI. And I think you could argue that the value side of the equation also was much less. And now with both of those elevated, the type of dialogue that's occurring all the way up to our executive committee, the frequency with which that's happening, the kinds of conversations that are happening. Brian just did a fabulous job here on Tuesday, taking our senior technical leadership team through the detailed architecture of AI as it stands today. And by the way, it probably changed since Tuesday because that's what's happening. But this type of discussion has not happened before. Most of that was happening in lower levels in the organization. So I think that's also very unique, and it also, I think, is changing the dynamic of what it means to be a leader in technology. And that is the degree to which you need to be an expert in the technology and be a leader together is changing significantly. So something to think about for all of you that are working your way into that space right now. Okay, well, let's change gears and maybe get to a few specifics. And last year, our CEO, Dave Ricks, in an article in the Business Insider, he had a quote that says that AI has the potential to upend the pharma industry. And I think that's true both from not just how we operate inside of our company, but also how we think about a different way to make healthcare work. Which, by the way, healthcare doesn't always work. So I think that opportunity is there. He also shared the concept of a digital worker equivalent workforce. And the statement being made that AI has the potential to create a massive digital worker equivalent workforce through the efficiency gains that it can provide. So maybe first, Brian, if you could just help us understand what in the heck is this digital worker equivalent workforce?
Yeah.
But then also give us a couple of examples of how you've seen AI applied in practice at Lilly that can help the team better understand the different types of ways that we can harness its value and in terms of effectiveness for the business, but also the efficiency for how we can operate.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thanks, Charlie. I'll start with the digital worker equivalent definition because I just happened to be in the room when that idea was hatched and thought this is ridiculous. But it's actually become quite a powerful tool for helping us to get into AI conversations with leadership. And the idea is how much, it's a really simple calculation, right? It's essentially, okay, a single, employee has about 2,000 hours of work that they do in a year. If you just multiply 40 by 52 and said, okay, for 2,000 hours of efficiency created, that's one digital worker equivalent. So it's a quick way to kind of measure the efficiency that you're creating by implementing these types of solutions. But it's really not about, because we get in a lot of conversations, well, okay, well, if you've created 5 digital worker equivalents, then that means you've eliminated 5 roles. So we need to go then recover those. It's not really what that's saying. That's saying that I'm now creating the ability for 5 people to focus on what they were hired to do and their area of expertise, and empowering the knowledge workers, which is really kind of at the core of all of this, the utility of AI. And so that is frankly how we've approached it internally, and it's been quite healthy to kind of get folks comfortable with it. And I don't think anyone would, say that they want more emails or, respond to more messages or draft more documents. So that's kind of how we've leveraged it to drive the sort of the value proposition forward. But then about some concrete examples connected to Dave's comments. One of the sort of the first forays into generative AI before we were really thinking about generative AI or the world was talking about it was in natural language generation, specifically in our clinical space, and being able to then automate a number of the repeatable documents that we have, specifically starting with the patient narrative, which just describes a patient's interactions with the clinical trial that they're in. And so we started working internally on what that would mean, who that would touch, how they would use it. And by virtue of doing that work, of course, as part of architecture, right, we're constantly scanning the environment, looking for, market leaders, professional services, people that can help us to lead in this space, because we can't do it all ourselves. And in doing that, we found that Sanofi was doing some initial experiments with a French company called YSEOP, YSEOP, an NLG vendor that had started in the financial space. And we thought, hey, this could be interesting. So we started talking with them, and they were like, okay, we've just done this little, POC with Sanofi, but we'd like to go deeper with you, Lilly. So we entered into a strategic partnership with them that ultimately led to implementing their technology with our subject matter expertise in clinical for all of these patient narratives. I think we have a short video that kind of describes EasyOp and how they support Lilly.
Are you spending hours creating regulatory and complex reports? EasyOp can help you automate content generation using natural language generation. Leading life sciences and financial institutions already leverage this AI technology to speed up their workflows. At EasyOp, we have developed a platform that transforms data into rich documentation using a self-service, industry-agnostic web interface that requires no coding. EasyUp automates historically manual and time-consuming workflows in clinical and finance reporting, going from 4 hours to 4 seconds. To get started, simply upload your data with a few clicks and generate meaningful reports in seconds. The platform supports text customization, advanced filtering, report configuration, and table generation. It's also compatible with common business intelligence tools like Tableau and Qlik, so that users can generate automated comments without leaving their native BI interface. With EasyOp's platform, your highly skilled knowledge workers can focus on value-driving tasks. Learn more at easyop.com.
That work is in the public domain. That's been announced. Another one that's in the public domain is the work we've done, actually earned a CIO 100 award around what we call Design Hub Analytics, but essentially using historic clinical outcomes data to define, then through machine learning, future clinical trials designs. And we continue to expand the capabilities of that suite and incorporate generative AI features into that, which we think will be a huge unlock. Just a couple examples of real stuff we've done.
Great, thanks, Brian. Okay, yeah. So maybe just give us a sense as we look ahead, what are some of the emerging trends in the next 2-3 years that we can expect to see from AI that you think could have significant impact on us in pharma or even beyond?
Yeah, and that's, honestly, just the whole you could go down and start talking about opportunities. I think things that we've seen, just advances recently, Google with Gemini just yesterday announced, or 2 days ago announced 1.5 Pro, which opened the context window to 1 million characters and may make, we spent all this time learning about retrieval augmented generation. Now we can leverage that, and now you can push it all into the query, all into the prompt, and we're just going to see those types of things. And I think what that would allow us to do then is to add more language-based or large language model-based capabilities quickly into the portfolio. And then applying those, if you think about, some of the existing work that I mentioned that's ongoing, to relationships and interactions with external customers, partners, those types of things, being able to, as we interact with them, bring all of that information back in behavior-based data sets that then can do reinforcement learning of those models and ultimately then potentially lead us into some fully automated autonomous workflows. We're really right now in this human augmented state of AI at Lilly. And we've gotten folks through this initial wave of work out of the human first model in the areas that we've touched, but there's still a lot of ways to go to get to this machine first paradigm, which we see as really possible now from these recent advances in machine learning and AI.
Great, thanks. So I think, again, the main message that I said earlier, I'll say it again. AI is not a separate thing. It's going to be a part of everything that we do. So given that, what are some practical tips that you could share with folks on how people can get more comfortable with AI? Not just about how they could use it themselves, but also how to think about ways to solve problems around them and to make what you find better.
Yeah, I mean, just personally, right? And at Lilly, we have the benefit of having access to unprecedented technology and relationships with the hyperscalers to get us access to preview versions of things, and it allows the folks that are in the space to get hands-on and experiment with this class of technology. But there's a huge amount of things that are available broadly through the open source community. Hugging Face is a great opportunity for you to access pre-trained models. And I would say, if this is not something that you touch daily, that you take the time to, I think Diogo mentioned, start by kind of learning the math, foundational constructs. Computer science has supported these for some time. It's an extension of that in the field of AI, but spend some time in that. I think the theory always helps. And then spend time with the technology, building, silly little widgets for hobby projects, because that'll ultimately then compel you, or, figure if this is the place that you want to be with technology. I think, to Charlie's point, it's going to be so pervasive that those who have those types of experiences and skills will, be the ones that win with AI. And look for hackathons. Find, maybe even create one. Find some friends that that maybe are all at the same level or different levels of tech exposure. Probably different levels is more fun, and just to get together and have an idea and build a thing. And it may be awesome, it may suck, but you'll all learn and have fun together, and you'll probably never forget it.
Great. So last quick question, 2 parts, quick answers. First one is, what is your favorite AI solution today? And if there were, back to the magic wand thing that Jeff was talking about, if you could wave a magic wand and use AI to make a solution for tomorrow, what would that be?
So the first one's easy. It's Microsoft 365 Copilot. It just makes a lot of things easier, especially the Teams integration. If you use that for meetings and you don't have to take notes or record action items anymore, it just automatically does that. It's fantastic. I can summarize Charlie's emails so that I can figure out what he's trying to tell me quicker. That's fantastic. Love that stuff. I think that's only going to get better. As far as like what selfishly I would, want from AI, I do have, I'm a geek, so I do have some ideas, but I think the thing that's cool is that I don't really think about it that way. I think about, and being at Lilly and, always looking to, with our mission, make things better and better. It's really about finding the right groups that are going to benefit the most from the technology, and then focusing and prioritizing on those groups and figuring out how to leverage the tech to support them. I think by that, you'll then learn where your own interests lie. And I have some of that learning myself, but still very driven by this, as Charlie mentioned, huge backlog of opportunity, a lot of that patient and healthcare provider facing, where we still haven't scratched the surface yet. So until we're good there, I don't think I'll be able to rest and be selfish about it. But could I turn the tables a bit and see what's your favorite AI tech?
Well, I have to say that it's also the same. And the most recent experience I had on that was I had to do a presentation. I was asked to pull one together quickly, and I went to Copilot and just prompted with the topic. Within about 15 minutes, I had a great draft of the entire set of content, and then I tuned it for Lilly, put it into Microsoft PowerPoint, used the designer and Copilot and PowerPoint to also make my slides better, and even created an image that was appropriate for what we were trying to do. So a great example, I think, of being able to apply this in your daily life. And since most of what I do is create PowerPoint slides and send long emails to Brian, actually, by the way, I should also say one of my least favorite AI technologies is the assistant in Copilot emails that evaluates your emails for you. So you click this button and it gives you coaching tips on your emails. And it always tells me that my emails are too direct, too terse, and someone might think that I'm not happy with them. And my issue is they're intended to be direct and intended to be terse, and I know I'm not happy with them. So I think this idea of making me a nicer person is really not helping me. So I've stopped the coaching because I don't like it. But anyway, so there you go. I think we have some time for other questions from the group, so we'll open it up.
We've got one question from the live stream. So Tony Summerall, who's not here with us right now, is an adjunct professor for the Leadership Institute, has asked a question for you guys. So obviously implementing any sort of change, especially when something new and unknown like this, buy-in is super important. Gaining the trust of the people that you're working with to try and implement this. So what are some things that you guys have done at Lilly to show that AI would be helpful? It's going to be impactful for you.
I'd say you want to start with some examples maybe of what you did last year.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. That's great question. Yeah, and I mentioned briefly, but we did a lot of experiments. Actually, 24 deliveries in 6 months of Gen AI solutions that we put out through a labs portal within the company that folks could use. Things like being able to essentially a travel and expense policy chatbot. Our travel and expense policy, being a big company, can just be hard to navigate. And we wanted folks to show that we could understand the technology and deliver a solution, and B, get folks to interact with it. And we have mechanisms in there by which folks can, provide their feedback. It's good, it's bad, and then if it's bad, what is bad with it, and then we use that to train things. And then we also have some other things we've done, like image generators and those kind of things. And so that's sort of bringing, the employee into the fold, embracing them with the technology and allowing them to have a voice and understand kind of that it's not threatening and, can be useful in certain things. I think you maybe have a second part of that.
I can.
Okay.
I would just add, I think if you take the article that our CEO Dave Ricks wrote last year, I mean, that was I think it was in July or September of 2023, where he's articulating to the world that AI is going to change and upend pharma. If your CEO is saying that, then it catches the eye of everybody below your CEO. And while that change, that trickle down of change doesn't happen overnight, there's also other actions that are being taken to help bring the awareness, understanding of AI into the leadership ranks across Lilly. And I think that, to me, is one of the biggest benefits of driving changes to make sure, and you heard this again from Jeff, leaders should start. And if the leaders can demonstrate it, then I think you can get the rest of the organization too. There's a question over here as well. Did you have a question? Oh, that question. Okay, good. Same question. Other questions? Yes.
I love that question because, in personal experience, was joining Lilly in their, vision or mission of being a science-based company, but clearly with that, technology background, it became, sort of evident to me that role that science and technology would play together. And it's playing out now, some 20 years later. And I think we'll just continue to grow. And so I would just recommend anyone who's kind of sitting between science and tech to embrace both, frankly, and ensure that no matter what you do, science, medicine, what have you, that you have tech there as part of your skill set. And then really you can kind of go anywhere, frankly. That would be my sort of recommendation. And then at Lilly, it's just a unique place, right? Being a big company, it has so much opportunity. I wouldn't say that I necessarily pursued this, but it found me just because I had those skills and they were needed at the time because there wasn't a lot of understanding of from a digital perspective what the lab needed, and I was able to speak both languages and turn it into a career. But I would say, kind of where you're sitting academically, that makes a lot of sense. Just make sure that, as you go down your journey, that you're bringing all of those skills and experiences to bear. That's how you'll be the most fulfilled.
Excellent. How
Go ahead.
Yeah. So are you asking about like employment opportunity or leadership? Oh, okay. Yeah. Good question. So nothing demonstrable. Really, at this point, it's about understanding how to apply the technology to improve the employee, patient, customer experience rather than essentially bottom line. I don't know over time how that plays out, frankly. I think there's, obviously that will have some effect. But at the moment, it's more about sort of being aggressive with the technology, embracing it, and then improving our processes as we go through that, which could result in, some roles being less necessary, frankly.
Remember that. I think the two pieces. One is Lilly's in a pretty unique place right now as well, where the company is growing significantly in terms of the products that we're driving, the expectations that we have. And so we basically have empty shoes to fill in order to get work done. So I think that's one thing that's also helping us. We have to be more productive in order to be able to achieve the goals that we have as a company. So that's one thing I would say. The second, the second I guess I would say is, I think AI is really an opportunity just to also rethink how work gets done. And we do this all the time. I mean, all companies do this. Everybody looks for better ways to get things done. I think what AI brings uniquely is we talked about examples where, for example, I drafted parts of this talk or I drafted that presentation and I tweaked it and I did it in 2 hours versus 16, which was great. I could get that presentation done faster, which is helpful. I could get more things done, which was helpful. But the real question is did I even need to do the presentation? Could we have just done away with the presentation by having a different way to accomplish the outcome? And I think that's the other piece that we need to be looking at. And I think we one of the things that Diogo, I think he said in this video, if he didn't, he said it in other things, there isn't a job that will not get impacted. It's a double negative. All jobs will get impacted by AI, period. Okay. The question is how do we, as people in those roles, think about the way that we're going to grow in our skills and our capabilities so that as the expectations of that role increase, we're in a position to be able to execute that role with those increased expectations. And I think that's the role of leadership. The role of leadership is to make sure that we're working with our teams and individuals to help them understand what those expectations will continue to look like and how do we make sure that we're skilling folks towards those expectations. Mm-hmm. We good or
maybe what I'll request, because I know and I probably have lots more questions. We're going to have a discussion.
Oh yeah.
With us.
Yep, we will. Sounds great.
Thank you very, very, very much. you're going to hear from are alumni leadership, but it's out in the real world. So I'm going to ask some of them to come down front, and we'll do a little switch of the chairs, and also if Taylor and David and Matt down. So one of the things that all our speakers have talked about is change and how we have to be aware of what's going on and keep moving with it, right? And if you wonder how I come up with changing the Leadership Institute all the time, and many of you know that I switch up courses all the time, always have. But how I think about what to do for the future is talking to people like our speakers, and also very much spending time with our alums that are out in the real world and listening. What's going on? What's different? Because I'm not at all of those companies and all those industries every day. So these they become my library. Everyone here knows I'm a book addict, but I'm also kind of consider people to be another way to learn. So please have a seat. And we're going to go pretty free form. We all know each other really well, and many of you in the audience know our folks. If any of the other alums would like to chime in at any point, feel free. You know, we're a community, right? And I'm going to kind of pass this along. And what I'd like to do is ask each of you first to tell everybody a little bit about what you did since graduating. And then I'll come back and just sort of ask you some other things. But first, we want to get to know you.
Hi, I'm Casey Jakowski. I was from cohort 9. So I've been out for about 2 years. Yeah. So I'm actually a part of the Lockheed Martin ++ team. I was originally on Jeff Wilcox's team for my first internship of digital transformation. So I've been doing a full stack engineering job. I'm a front end tech lead. And we actually are using a little bit of AI on our latest project. So.
And you might mention where you're located.
I'm working remotely, so I'm currently in Michigan. I am moving soon, though.
Okay.
Matt DePiro, cohort 5. Thanks for having me. This is crazy to be back, first time, so very excited. I started off at Google when I first graduated, moved on to a startup called Neva, which was about 30 people when I joined, 100 when it was acquired by Snowflake, and I've been getting progressively smaller because now I'm on a team of 3 at a company called FinTool. We're using AI to augment research into public companies for financial analysts, and I'm in San Francisco.
Like Jeff, I was reading about who my co-panelists are going to be. I saw that you're working with like Edgar and generative. My brother works in accounting over down in Charlotte, so I thought that was kind of funny to see. I use Snowflake too, so that's very interesting. But hello everyone, my name is Taylor White. I graduated from Miami in 2014. I was part of cohort 1, and I went up to Madison, Wisconsin, working for Epic. So if any of you have my chart accounts, I worked for the company that built my chart. During that time, I was there for about 7 years. I first was on a hospital logistics inpatient team where we were part of a few of the AI projects my team was working on were predicting patient censuses within units, so for the use of nurse scheduling. And then I left that company and went to ZocDoc, which is it's a healthcare scheduling company up in New York City, and I was on the machine learning team there for research. And then I recently started a software company with some of my colleagues working for kind of around government advocacy, and we're doing some AI work there too.
Everybody, I'm David Gata. I graduated in 2015. I'm part of cohort 2. Since then, I joined Lilly straight out of college. I worked for them for about 6 years. I was on a team supporting email, and then I was a team creating kind of a backbone for like the enterprise data. So I was a developer there. And then I recently took, I'll call it a 2-year sabbatical, where I went back to school for a master's degree to learn more about artificial intelligence and machine learning. So I went over to Northern California with my partner Miranda, who accompanied me getting her MBA over at UC Berkeley. There, I was able to connect with a lot of different real cool professors and researchers working on different projects, and I actually partnered with people in like the School of Medicine, working with cardiologists and blending a lot of different, ideas and things. It was a really cool experience to kind of collaborate cross boundaries with people that, probably didn't have any interest in working with technologists in the first place, but it's really cool when you can see kind of a shared benefit when you can kind of cross and blend the lines. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for that. But yeah, that's what I'm up to.
Maybe each of you could tell us a little bit about kind of what you think about artificial intelligence. If you've worked with it, how it's been for you, what it was like learning about it at school, just like your personal side.
Yeah, so I think that AI would be like a really great tool and just like another brain to bounce ideas off of, as if like you're talking to someone else. But it shouldn't be a replacement for someone else. Obviously, like for the humans, and AI should work like with us. It shouldn't work on its own, because it will get some things wrong. Just like maybe the language is not exactly how a person would sound. Like I know that I have to go back in and fix a first draft of something that I wrote in ChatGPT, but we shouldn't replace the humans with AI. We should use it together and just collaborate.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Louise opened this with a metaphor about calculators and how back in the day, they're going to change everything, and they didn't, life goes on and things are pretty normal. I think that's going to happen with AI as well. These tools are incredibly powerful, but at the end of the day, they're language calculators. That's effectively what they end up being. You can change the temperature of the model to throw noise, and that noise is it emerges as creativity, but it's not creativity. It's just noise that ends up kind of consolidating on different answers. And so when you really dig into these models, they're just really, really big calculators. And I think if we look at them that way and keep the human element as what goes in and out, I think that's really where I kind of see AI blossoming in the long term.
Just make sure I didn't lose track of the question, but what has my experience been with it, and what do I think of it? Okay. Yeah, so I would say when I first started doing my first big AI project at Epic, we were essentially tasked with trying to reduce, essentially last minute nurse scheduling, where a census is over populated and we need to bring in new nurses. And so one of the things that we did is we went out to all these hospitals and we're talking with the nurses and saying, what are the factors for, census? So obviously you have all the patients that are currently admitted. So we need to predict whether or not they're going to be discharged. How do we do that? And as you look further and further out, the way you determine the census, you no longer have any patients admitted 10 weeks into the future. Those patients that are here now aren't going to be there. And so it was really interesting. We kind of approached it as somewhat naively, where we used this model that wasn't transparent to the nurses, so they had no trust in it, right? So even if it was perfectly accurate, which it wasn't, the nurses weren't trusting that the census was going to be this level 6 weeks from now. And so one of the things I found really enlightening as we were kind of diving down that pathway is that there's all these different things you're trying to optimize for, and it might not necessarily be accuracy. If the model is not understandable by the audience, then it's not actually going to be used in a production environment, and people aren't going to actually act on it. So I think one of the terms that Charlie and Jeff and Brian were using earlier is, AI has been democratized. I can definitely say, in my experience so far, is becoming substantially easier to create models than it was 10 years ago. The large language models, I think a lot of times get disparaged a little bit in the AI industry by folks that say they don't really understand what's going on. And I'm a little bit more skeptical of that. But I do think it's being increasingly democratized and easier to use these days.
Yeah, wait, what was the question again?
Your experience.
Your experience.
What do you think of it?
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. All right. My experience with AI started kind of a while ago. It was the one class I didn't take in undergrad that I just couldn't fit in my schedule. I really regretted that. So I started looking into it by myself after hours at work or after work hours. So in the evenings and stuff. I stumbled on a course that I think most people that got into it took, but it was this Andrew Ng course on machine learning. And I just thought it was the coolest thing I've ever seen. It flipped computer science on its head. I'm not programming a computer. I'm giving it data and letting it figure out how to do, what I'm trying to get it to do. And what he said was AI is to do electricity. And I think everybody's feeling that a little bit now. So yeah, it's really weird. I was really into that and I was like, man, I can't wait to see where this goes. And now everybody's like, man, I really can't wait to see where this goes. The one thing that I've kind of seen as I've been, getting more into it and researching it, it gets really confusing. People don't really understand it. And everybody's kind of, I don't know, just trying things out and making things up. So there's a lot of that. So continue being skeptical of what you're seeing, but yeah, use all the tools you can to help empower yourself. But yeah, on to I don't know, the really nerdy stuff, like is this thing sentient or whatever. If you want to read a really cool paper about GPT-4, there's a bunch of tests that Microsoft did, and it was called Sparks of General Intelligence. And there's just some things in there where it's like, wait, sorry, how did you guys train this thing? And they're like, we just gave it a load of text. And now it's there's emergent properties where they can kind of understand spatial reasoning and awareness. And it's I don't know, that's the thing that I kind of nerd out in and really keeps me engaged in the area. But I don't know, that's kind of more theoretical, kind of weirdness stuff. So it's just, I don't know, it's really exciting. I don't know what's going to happen, but we're all along for the ride.
Just to keep the nerdiness going, I also think that all this stuff is amazing. And one of those things is when you encode tokens are effectively words that go into the model. You create what's called an embedding. And an embedding is this very high dimensional space. You have 2D, 3D, and you can think of a vector in those dimensions. So you point in a direction, that's a vector. And when you get to hundreds and thousands of dimensions, you end up in a situation where directions have meaning within that space. And one of the things that ends up happening is you just throw text at these models, and you can take the word daughter and you can take the word boy. You can subtract the vector daughter from boy, or sorry, daughter from son, and you get basically the direction of girl, which is absolutely wild. The model has effectively encoded meaning into these just arbitrary numbers that it knows nothing about. And I think that's where a lot of this intelligence is coming from, is we just have more compute power. We can handle larger dimensional spaces. And that's where this kind of inflection point hit, and all of a sudden it's blowing up. I had one more comment, which is you don't want to be left behind. I think it was either Charlie or Brian, I believe, you talked about RAG, retrieval augmented generation, and how Gemini came out, which is the Google model, and you have 1 million tokens of context. So do you even need to search documents to provide context to these models when you could give 1 million tokens of context? You could give it the Lord of the Rings and ask what street a certain event happened, and it'll answer the question. I have a lot to talk about that, but that's a separate story. You don't want to get left behind. Bloomberg had an example where when GPT 3.5 was out, Bloomberg tried to train their own finance assistant, and they threw millions of dollars at the problem, and they wanted to make GPT able to work for finance and help their analysts. GPT-4 came out and it outperformed everything that they had done, and it was completely worthless, and they threw it away because GPT-4 was better. So you don't want to get left behind. It's moving really, really quickly, and some of the smartest people in the world are working on it. So you got to pick your battles and, choose what works for you. And I think that's a really important part also.
So I'm interested because you can remember being in this room, you can remember all the things that our students are going through now and our new cohort's going to be going through. If you could give, and now in this world, it's a little different. I smile to myself because I know you all so well, but a lot has happened in the world since, we were all here together those years. If you could give some advice for the students, as it relates to, technology, maybe artificial intelligence, but also kind of as they go through the process of college and the Leadership Institute, what might that be?
Let's go first.
You don't have to go first.
I'll give one that's not as technical. Adam Savage, who was the host of Mythbusters, a lot of you are probably too young to know what that show is, but he said that your 20s are the hardest years of your life because it's the first time that you're really genuinely free and there's really not structure defining exactly what you should be doing, but you also still have no clue what's happening. And so I think for any of the seniors in the room who are about to move on to that very crazy stage of your life, keep that in mind. It's going to be tough. It doesn't magically become you're not done. So I think that's important. And in terms of AI, I think one big thing for me is quality versus quantity. Information has never, ever been more available. And so, you can just sit there on TikTok and scroll forever. That's a large amount of information, but how much are you really getting out of it? It depends. You might have an algorithm that's feeding you interesting content that genuinely is helpful, but your media diet is a really important thing that I think everybody should explicitly decide before they spend hours and hours and hours every single day. Think about what you're reading and what you're listening to and who you're listening to and why, because I think that's going to be more important than ever moving forward.
What advice do I have for you guys? Let's go. Yeah, it's. I think about this a lot because just like Jeff was saying, I've been here now that I've been out for so long. I've also been here a number of times for conferences as an alumni, and one of the comments I think about a lot when I was a junior and going through the first couple of years of the Leadership Institute was Marty Lakes came in. He was talking about, his career totally shifted. And I think you were asking about, shifting your major. And a lot of the recurring themes I hear from folks that come back are wise leaders in the second half of their lives or fourth quarters of their lives. We'll talk about, the connections that they built, the people that they know, and, some of the importance of your relationship. So I say, cherish, being in this room of highly motivated peers, definitely, challenge yourselves and be close to one another, work really hard, but really maintain strong networks. It's been great. I have a very rewarding set of relationships with some of the folks that I went through with my cohort. I still see a number of them regularly, even though I live across states. So I would just say, from a career perspective, work hard, build relationships, and kind of think about where you want to be. So think about what your career path is and try to head in that direction. In terms of AI, I would also echo Jeff in terms of talking about the neural network. So just basically understanding at its core how these things are working, right? So have any of you guys used Dolly and where you go and say, you type in a line of text? Do you guys know how that works? Okay, so no one. Basically, all they did there, right? They took a neural network, trying to predict that. And these technologies have been around for a long time. Where Facebook might be using a neural network to describe like what's in an image, and basically what they did is they reverse that direction. So they say, give me the text, and I'm going to keep generating an image until these neurons are firing and predicting out the text that I gave it. So it can start from nothing, right? And that's just like David was talking about, like it completely flips computer science upside down in terms of saying, how to arrive at this thing. You're not going to put these sets of heuristics in there, but instead you're going to feed it data and have the model kind of figure that out on its own. So I would highly recommend kind of understanding the core fundamentals of whatever machine learning technology you're using, whether that is transformers and word embeddings, or some kind of multiple linear regression, something like that. Just understand the core, and I think that'll be helpful to you guys as you kind of get into these much larger scale problems.
Cool. Forgot the exact question, but I get the gist of it. So I don't know, maybe, one piece of advice reflecting back on, when I was here. I think we could all just reflect a little bit more on, the things you're hearing, and just your particular situation. That's one thing that I think you can get caught up, really focusing on, doing something, performing something, getting a job, interviewing. And if you're not cognizant of where you are and how you're feeling, you can end up somewhere that you thought you were, that was your goal, but it might not have been something that really intrinsically you value. So just keep reflecting on where you are, and don't get caught up by things like, money, role, names, salaries, or anything like that. And one thing for me personally was just remembering that everybody's kind of figuring things out and nobody's really off limits. You can ask questions, reach out, and don't put yourself in a box. And just don't put yourself in a box. That's probably a good little piece of advice.
Yeah, I guess a few things. So first of all, I really like the relationship talks over here. I still talk to my friends all the time that I made here, and those relationships are so valuable to me. And I'll just go on a 3-hour phone conversation with my roommate for 2 years, and we just talk about whatever we want to. It's it goes beyond just, oh, what have you done with the past month? It's what are your thoughts on life? And it's really nice to get introspective with people that you know, and just be introspective with yourself as well. Because I remember an assignment where we just had to sit for an hour and just think, put everything technology away, just go be alone and just think. And I got really existential, but it was great. I loved it so much. But yeah, I definitely go introspective, definitely keep your relationships close, because relationships, I think, are what makes life worth living. And then also I'd like to say you should stay curious, because there's so much information out there, and it's not always best to just take whatever information you get in and take it as truth. You need to go out and be aggressive to find the truth if that's really passionate to you. And then if it's not passionate to you, then it's fine. You can just throw that information out, because who knows if it's even true, and don't just pass on information that could be false to someone else, and they might be passionate about it and just take what you say is true. But stay curious, keep your relationships close. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Do we have any questions from other alumni or any of our students? Yes, Brody. Okay, you want to say it in here? So we can all hear?
Tony asks, have any of you received cautions or prohibitions from your companies against using generative AI in your daily work for them?
So literally yesterday, I just got done with like the annual security briefing, and they've already added AI to that security briefing. You got to now add AI tags to anything that's AI generated, but also like don't put Lockheed Martin information into the chatbot to spit something back out, and that's keep that in mind. Just like using chatbots, don't put personal or like really important information in there in general. Just don't do it. But yeah, and they like to say, so Lockheed Martin is really trying to go towards this AI avenue, but they like to use their own information because at the same time, you don't really know everything about the information that other chatbots are using. So we have like our own chatbot that they're currently creating. It's still in the works though, so it's not performing as good as things that are already out there and like our standards. So it's that, and then yeah, I guess that's it.
So at FinTool, we have the inverse of this problem, which is we're making the AI tool and we need companies to adopt it and be willing to use it. The privacy, component of it is very, very big. OpenAI and GPT, the enterprise API, they don't train on, but certainly if you have very secure information, you need to still be careful. And it's a big problem for companies because, a company like OpenAI is leading, at least right now. You have Google, et cetera. So do you build these things in-house so that you keep everything in a closed system, or do you trust these other companies? And it's not just about trusting them. Cybersecurity is a problem. They can get compromised. It's a whole issue. And so thankfully, the finance people tend to just want to make money, so they don't care as much. But, it's a very important problem. And so we've certainly seen a lot of resistance trying to sell to especially larger firms. Despite being a really tiny startup, there's a lot of demand for the product that we're building, which is very exciting. But we see it every single day. What kind of logs do you keep? Are things anonymized? We need to be able to use user logs to make the product better, but we need to do it in a privacy-centric way. And so, and also we don't send the data, the enterprise API is not logged. So supposedly everything's good there. But these are questions that we're asking every single day. And, we have a very privacy-centric approach because we have to, because companies demand that. And if we don't have that, then they're not going to be willing to use it.
So I'm a company of one right now, so I make the rules. But so I will say I had two other co-founders who kind of moved on, but we've adopted the large language models. We do some other modeling that's not tied to GPT. But we have been incorporating kind of what Brian was saying a little bit more widely. And so one of the things that we've started doing, so we label any summarizations that are through our application that have been generated via AI of like bill text or testimony or whatever, but we're also starting to use it to classify. So, Charlie of Eli Lilly testified at this public hearing on this type of drug that's being released. Did he testify in support or against it? And that's something that I'm a little bit hesitant to do right now, trying to figure out the right approach, because getting that one word for or against that's going to be very bad for the trust and use of our users of our application. So we're definitely cognizant of that. But like I said, it's just me, so no one's told me not to do it. We are very careful about it.
That's a good spot. I think we already covered a little bit of, how Lilly does everything and the privacy and things around that. I think it's about getting it right. I think the company wants to use everything in their power to make us more productive, better people, better products, better care. But you just need to figure out how we can do it in a safe way. So I think that's kind of Lily's take on it. We want to use it, if we just have to do it ethically.
Any other questions from the, yeah.
So my question is probably more specific towards, I believe, Taylor, which you're working from an advocacy. So I guess like I was recently like reading like a Federal Trade Commission report, and then it was related towards Meta being, I think they're like having a lawsuit set up against them for having, WhatsApp and like those other medias. Basically, they were more focused towards, I believe, desktop sites, and they say it's an antitrust lawsuit pertaining to them, and now it's like coming up. So in like this age of like AI, and then the companies are leading companies like Google, Apple, Meta, they're emerging out of it. And do you think they're also going to do like these probably like acquisitions like and this mergers and like try to take over the new startups? So in terms of that, like as like for the government, do you think like more like laws are necessary to prevent this antitrust and like and then make sure they don't collude like in that manner? Make sure this AI is really like a democratized approach, and then we see more entrepreneurs that come out of it, and we see like I guess more maybe like $1 trillion companies.
Yeah, so it's just for a little good question. A little bit of background. I don't actually work for any state agencies or anything. It's just so it's a company. Yeah. So it's a good question. I mean, I think there's been a lot of antitrust policy that's being proposed across like both Europe and the United States, particularly against like the big tech companies. I think one thing that's kind of interesting, and you heard Charlie talk about like Dave Rich, talking about AI has the potential to upend all of these industries, right? And I think that's something that's very interesting because a lot of folks are going to ChatGPT instead of Google to ask questions, right? We previously went to Google. Google generated ad revenue, through these auctions through your query, and it's completely upending some of Google's profit margins and their whole business model. And so I do feel like AI has potential. I mean, I think it's going to be even bigger than mobile phones and internet. I think it's almost at the level of like printing press in terms of like upending industries. I am a little bit worried about, so there's a pact between, I think it was Meta, Google, there's a few other big companies that, if they ever take 50% of global GDP, that they'll share those profits amongst all of them, right? And the idea being that if someone gets artificial general intelligence, it's going to be so powerful, and essentially like you're going to hit like the singularity where like the intelligence of that machine grows at an exponential rate. That they can essentially take over all industries. And I don't know, I don't think the world's gonna end, but I do think we have to be careful. I think there's gonna be, the change is gonna happen quickly when that happens, and I'm nervous for it. But I think it's gonna be, at the end, we're gonna come out for the positive. What other questions?
Other questions? Well, one thing I would like to say is that you can tell this is just a sample of our alums, and many, many are here today. So I hope at the reception that you'll spend time getting to know them, and they've got a lot of interesting things to share. So let's give them a hand, and you'll have a chance soon. And so next, I would like to turn this over to our students. We work very closely now in the Leadership Institute with the honors program, the honors college at Miami University. And 3 of our students in cohort 11 that are in the honors college have prepared a summary video. So those of you that know me can just about imagine what I'm saying. Okay, you have been reading dozens and dozens of articles. You've been doing interviews for a whole academic year. You've been studying this. Could you put this into a 4-minute video for me, okay? And make it lively. So I'm going to turn this over to the folks that made that possible.
Hello all, my name is Alex Coulomb. I'm a member of the 11th cohort of the Lilly Leadership Institute. So I'm a junior, I'm studying biomedical engineering, and like Professor Mormon said, we've been working on this conference, our website, all of our resources for over 7 months now. This has been a very long, ongoing, cumulative project, and it's not very easy to sum up in few words. So some of us in the Honors College here, myself, Naomi, please stand up. She's hating that I'm doing this. And Jay as well. The 3 of us collaborated to put together this video along with some of our other cohort members. So you'll get a taste of some of the impacts of artificial intelligence. Because as all of the students know, you know how AI can be used, right? Right? Yes, I see some smiles, some sly nods. We know what AI can be used for. However, it has greater impact. So this video touches a little bit on its economic impact and some of the industry-specific impacts that it can have.
As the realm of artificial intelligence expands, our dialogue moves beyond just academic shortcuts. Join us as we delve into the profound implications and transformations brought about by AI. Let's talk about AI for what it really is.
Transformative.
Innovative.
Disruptive.
Revolutionary.
Empowering.
Insightful.
Game-changing. But artificial intelligence is more than just a buzzword. It's a force that's reshaping our world in ways we never imagined. So let's delve deeper. Beyond its transformative and empowering capabilities lies an untapped frontier: AI's economic potential.
As a student diving into the tech field, it's clear that AI is no longer just a buzzword. And it's important for us to remember that AI isn't replacing us in the work we do, but rather enhancing and enabling us to do our work better. Take myself, for example. Whereas I would normally spend hours working on simple routine coding problems, now I can have AI handle those, which frees me up to handle more complex problems and innovate. Truly, AI is allowing us and empowering us to build smarter and more robust coding solutions. And with the tech world, or rather the whole world, honestly, talking about AI so much right now, it really feels like we are having an opportunity right now to not just see the wave of change, but actually ride with that wave and continue to perpetuate it and help it grow.
As a biomedical engineering student, diving into AI has opened up incredible opportunities for us. It's transforming how we approach everything from analyzing complex data to simulating clinical scenarios. With AI, we're not just learning about the future, we're actively shaping it. It's enabling us to develop smarter medical devices, create more accurate diagnostic tools, and even personalize patient care in ways we never thought possible. It feels like we're at the cutting edge, using AI to bridge the gap between technology and medicine and really making a difference in healthcare.
As a mechanical engineering student, AI is totally changing the game for us. It's making design and simulations smarter and faster, saving us from drowning in repetitive tasks. Now, we've got more time to tackle the big challenges, innovate, and think out of the box. Plus, with AI handling the predictive maintenance and helping in material design, we're not just learning about the future of engineering, we're actually helping to build it. It's an exciting time with AI pushing us to explore new frontiers and make a real difference.
As a design student, I'm excited about what AI is bringing to our table. It's not about AI taking over our jobs. Instead, it's like having a tool that speeds up how we work, turning our sketches into prototypes faster and making tedious tasks like data analysis and translating designs way easier. It's freeing us up to focus more on being creative and trying out new things. AI is like our backstage crew, helping us get our designs from idea to reality quicker and letting us experiment more. It's a game changer, making our creative process smoother and more enjoyable.
Is the Associate Provost and the Dean for Undergraduate Education. And in addition to the many, many jobs she has, she now gets a chance to work with the Leadership Institute. And we have the opportunity to work more broadly across Miami, because one of the things you also heard about this world of change and is that the silos are not part of life anymore. So we are trying to work in a broader way. So we're very excited about that. And Amy is also in charge of many university-wide programs. And I'm asking her to come today to talk about something special all of Miami University is doing.
Thank you. Wow, that video just now, it totally reminded me of why I love my job so much. I've worked in higher ed for 30 years, and it has never been a crazier place than it is right now. And part of that is what's happening with AI. But the thing that has been completely consistent through all of those 30 years is the incredible minds of young people growing, transforming, and thinking about how they're going to impact the future in incredibly powerful ways. And that is just the best way to end a week. Thank you for this. What a great day talking about AI and thinking about the possibilities that it brings. And I have to say, in the role that I'm in, one of the things that reports to me is our academic integrity office. So when AI started really blowing up a little over a year ago, we were mostly in a panic about what was going to happen, how are we going to be able to stave off the cheating and all of the blah, blah, blah. And it's really been fun to watch the conversation around campus change from yikes, AI to, oh, wow, AI is something that we can really embrace and we can use in the classroom and we can use in so many different ways. And thank you to all of you students for helping push us on that a little bit. So I'm very excited to talk for a minute about our Focus Theme Year, which is a program we do every year, where we try to coordinate events, speakers, activities, and big conversations around our whole campus about an important topic that impacts everybody. And next year's theme, fittingly, is going to be AI. So in some ways, you're kicking off something for our whole campus in today's conference. And So that's really exciting. We have a large campus committee that has loads of different people from different parts of our campus thinking about all the different ways that we can talk about and consider AI for our campus, but also for the world and how it's going to impact the future. So be watching for all of those things as they start to emerge early next semester. So I have a couple of things I wrote down here. I have to do that for myself because I have to, make sure I won't say everything that I have to say if I don't write it down. One of the things that impressed me also about today's conversations is the importance of collaboration. So, I think that's something around AI. It's like how we're building our understandings of AI and thinking about how we can use it in the future in groups, in collaborative environments. And so I just think this is such an important thing. And it's one of the parts of the Lilly Leadership Institute that is going to be so beneficial to you students as you go out into the workplace. Collaboration is one of the most important, what we're now calling career adaptability skills, because as you know, many of the careers that you will be working in eventually don't even exist today. So you will need to be able to work with other people and think about those ideas. And I would say that a room full of really wonderful minds working together is just as powerful as the generative nature of AI. So don't forget that you need to do that as well as part of this. I do want to say congratulations to the students, I'm guessing cohort 11, who put together this conference. This is a great example of collaboration in action. And so to all of the hard work that you've put in to thinking about this, organizing, working together and thinking about how to present something that can be so valuable for our community, thank you and congratulations on a job well done. I also want to say thanks to Louise and Fab. Fab's not in here right now because she's off doing her part to make this thing keep the wheels going in the right direction. But it has been really fun for me to take on the project of working with the two of these amazing people who understand leadership so well, who also really understand students well. And I think one of the most impressive things about Louise is just this constant energy and thinking about how do we make it better? How can we do better for our students? And responding to the feedback that she gets from you all is such an important part of that. And I have just enjoyed so much learning more about the Lilly Leadership Institute and the people behind it. Fab is an incredibly fabulous organizer. She does all the logistics of everything, and it's just amazing. So when you see her, make sure you thank her for all the work that she puts in to make your experience so pleasant and wonderful. Thank you to our alumni who are here today. It means so much to have you back here and to have your willingness to share your experiences with our younger students, our people who are going to be in this program for a couple of years, and especially those who are just on the verge of leaving us and going out into that world where you are already making an impact. So thank you for taking the time. And of course, none of this would be possible without our partnership with Eli Lilly and Company. And so thank you to you. We are doing our best to use the resources that you've provided with us to honor that partnership, to really encourage students to think about how they can impact the future in positive ways. And so we appreciate that very much. So I think I might be the only thing at this point standing between, maybe Louise is going to say something else because she might be standing between you and those heavy hors d'oeuvres. But I just want to say thanks to everybody for being here today. Not sure. Okay, stand in the middle. I'm moving around too much. Anyway, thank you all for being here, and I'm closing it down. So, Louise, do you want to say something? I don't think this is actually.
I just want to talk about those heavy hors d'oeuvres, okay? So, of course, thank you all for your time and attention today. We're all going to, years from now, talk about this when, we're far more along with artificial intelligence, and we'll reflect back on today and many, many important insights that we got. But what we're going to do next is really exciting. We're going to this brand new building that even you that have been here at Miami before may not have been in the gorgeous new McVeigh Data Science building, where Fab and I are very, very lucky to have our offices now. So the students will help kind of get you over there. I will say, for those that you that have been here longer, it is where Swing Hall, where Miranda used to have her dorm, used to be behind Benton. And I think you will be quite amazed when you see the new building, which is everything we've talked about today. So it's collaborative, it's wonderful, and it's a great working space. So we'll see you over there in a few moments. Thank you, thank you.